Hi, I'm Nigel Baker, and you're listening to The Future Financial Advisor. We're running this podcast to create an avenue for advisors to share their thoughts and their best interests, and really trying to attract those advisors who want to take the industry forward. What we want is great businesses who are really making a difference and really making a big impact to their clients, and we want to know how they're doing it. So in this series, we're going to be discussing the latest digital platforms, some best practices, evidence-based investing strategies. We want to give financial advisors the tools they need to help more investors improve their financial well-being. So if you're ready to take the industry forward, modernise your advisory practice and reach a new generation of investors and the new generation of advisors, then this show is for you.
So all our recordings and podcasts are general advice. All the content, all the people interviewing here, it's all their own opinions and all their own views. In no way does it constitute any personal advice or recommendations. If you need specific advice, please go and seek an advisor. Thanks very much.
So welcome to today's episode of The Future Financial Advisor. On these podcasts, we interview advisors, we interview people from the industry. It's relevant for advisors, for clients in this industry, for people looking to understand this industry better. And we also talk a lot about what's going on from a regulatory change at the moment as well, which is really exciting. At the end of the day, we just want to help more people, want to make advice accessible to more people, and we want to talk to businesses about how they're doing that. We know that a lot of businesses really love helping more complicated people, and of course they should focus on doing that. What we want to encourage is people opening that up to helping some of those clients and customers that don't need the full advice, and how can they do that using technology that still provide a really valuable and useful experience for those clients and customers. So today I'm really excited to have as our guest John Hazell. John I've known for a long time. He has been in the industry for 20 years, started off in the banking world, has started his own practice, has his own license, which is a tough journey in itself. He's got a great business called Richmond Partners in Sydney, and he's going to share his experience about his journey, how they use technology, how they're trying to use technology to help more people, and of course some of his thoughts about what needs to change to make this industry better for everyone. So thanks so much, John, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. All right, good morning, John. Great to have you here. How are you?
Good, thanks, Nige. How are you?
Yeah, no, really good. So, John, this podcast is all about learning from the best advisors, and I really appreciate you coming on board to share some of your thoughts on the industry and share some of your experiences. The question I'd like to ask first is, tell me about your story. How did you get into the industry?
Sort of by accident, I think like a lot of planners, came into the industry through the banking channel, then changed my mind on the banking side and took a job in funds management and client services, and really enjoyed that and tickled the interest. So from there, started studying and found myself back at the bank as a financial planner, and just coming up 20 years doing that now, but have taken that journey to take my own license to try and put my own footprint and version of things as I see it and the way the industry is going.
Yeah, well, interesting. So, jumping out of the big banks is where, most advisors sort of started in some way or form. I did the same, and obviously great experience. So just, I suppose for those listening, some are still trying to work out whether they should be in their own license or join a big group. What made you make the decision to set up your own license, and was that difficult?
Yeah, so I think it came about from a number of reasons, and I think if I look at it now, my reasons and rationale are probably different to even when I started. So I think ultimately it was about control and just being able to control the client experience and how we delivered advice and how we wanted to deliver advice. So whilst I loved the experience I had in the bank, like a lot of people, it came to a point where I didn't quite agree with how it was being delivered and what they were asking us to do. So I joined another license and found that quite liberating, and certainly able to, again, sort of put that own spin on how I delivered advice to clients, and really felt that was something that increased the experience for the clients, and we managed to put our own input in to get a better result for them in not just maybe performance or something like that, but also ultimately in terms of what services we delivered and how we delivered. So I think anyone looking at it now, I definitely think twice about a license, because it's a lot of work, but if it's something that they want to take that direction and put their own spin on delivering advice, whether that's with technology or experiences and the end user experience, it is something that you can fashion in your own way and deliver in a way that you feel more comfortable with. Certainly beyond that, I think it comes down to the individual, whether you want the more collegiate, experience of other advisors working under a license, someone else taking the responsibility of the license, or whether you want to step up and take that on. But it is a lot of work. So I'd say baby steps, don't dive into it too early unless you're really ready and you've got everything else figured out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's not the easy path, so well done. And setting up your own business and running your own license, certainly not the easiest way to do it, but I think, as you've seen, the rewards are there and the flexibility and the control seem to be worth it. Huh? So the industry's changed a lot since you and I jumped into it 20 years ago or so, and I think back then that there wasn't really an industry. It was sort of an evolving beast. So what's and a lot's changed, but what are you seeing as the key issues right now in an industry that's still going through a lot of regulatory reform and people are unsure? What do you see as the key issues?
Yeah, I think look, there's still the regulatory burdens are quite significant, and the hurdles to deliver advice are still, in my impression, way too high. I think you can still deliver good advice without some of the constraints that currently exist. The need for an 80-page statement of advice just is ludicrous. Really say it in a lot less, maybe 10 pages. I think that regulatory burden for a lot of planners we've seen exit of a lot of planners, significant numbers leaving. Adding to that the education piece, I don't think that's a problem. I think it's a good thing for the industry, and we should be raising the bar. But I can understand that can be a burden to people who've been in the industry for a long time. But I think that professionalism, issue is going to come back and haunt us if we don't address that. So, for the most part, technology is starting to help with some of these things, but that issue of the regulatory burden, the compliance side of things, just the sheer volume of work that has to be done to deliver a compliant SOA is something that it continues to trouble the industry. And I think that we're seeing massive influences in costs increasing and so forth. And that's, I think, probably the biggest burden, and certainly where we have a lot that we can deliver at a lower cost. That's going to be the continuing, I think, trip and journey that we're on at this stage.
Yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but Michelle Levy has put forward her sort of draft proposals, and there's been some interesting debate in the media around it. And some people surprisingly are resistant to letting go of SOAs. In my experience, I can't see how clients see much value in them. I can understand the need to want to make sure always the clients get the information and disclosure. But we've lived through this world where the requirement of a statement of advice really was driven by, in my view, the big licensees being terrified and therefore just kept adding layers and layers and layers. I don't think ASIC ever expected to be 80 pages.
No. And apparently ASIC are running to a different checklist than the one that they publicly list at the moment as well. So, it just goes to show that they do it their own way, and they'll continue to do so. But I think, you're right. Michelle's Levy's initial of what I've seen of it, the report certainly points towards the right way, I think, of trying to reduce that. And it's a sensible move. How we get there, that's a tough question. But I agree. I think most clients have to read it. They know they have to read it, but if you really got an honest answer from every client that they understood every single page and they read every single page, I just don't think that's reasonable. When it's 80 pages, we know that some of the stuff we put in, they might not read, but it might be an appendix and it's there to make sure we've covered ourselves. And that's not really the right way it should be delivered. It should be there to give them confidence and give them a plan that they can easily digest and understand and can come back and change as they need. The evolution of things like the video SOA is a good move. You're going to get more out of it when it's delivered that way. You're certainly going to, I think, probably see more, again, technology playing that role and seeing the conversion of that. But it will be interesting to see what comes out of the advice reform, and hopefully there are some positives and people take note, and those that matter take note, and we get some developments out of it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, interesting times. We'll see how it evolves. I think certainly her premise of good advice is a good idea, but again, how that evolves and how I mean, you still have to worry about the industry hasn't been great really at looking after the end client when you look at it, honestly, like people like you and I do, and there's lots of great advisors out there. But unfortunately, the industry has been pretty bad at using the rules to look after themselves first, and I suppose that's where the fears are coming in, saying if we reduce some of this paperwork, the paperwork came around to try and protect consumers. That hasn't really worked. I like the idea of good advice. I like the idea of saying, hey, depending on the client, like a client might need a one-page letter just to explain pay off your debt, versus a client might still need a 20-page document to explain a structure or a super fund. So I think it needs to be more flexible, and that allows good advisors like you to help more people. Technology can help, but I think that the legislation is pretty onerous at the moment. We all know that.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, look, the question of good advice is, it's subjective side of things. We'll see the results, but I think as long as the implementation of it is done in the right spirit and we follow, I don't think everything that's in the SOA at the moment is bad, and I think a lot of people would argue the merits of it, and I think that's it's a discussion for another time, but certainly for the most part, you should be able to deliver something almost in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. It works for just about every other industry. Why can't it be done for ours? I think most clients can glean what they need to from that. With reference points and other material, you can have that, and it should almost be a live, I think, sort of a live document that is changed and updated as the client situation moves, rather than another 80-page document 12 months later to state the same thing as you did the previous 12 months. So, that's some of the difficulty I think that they need to address. But yeah.
So you mentioned that, technology is a part of this solution. A business like yours, you're running pretty hard, you're talking to lots of people. How do you use technology at the moment to improve that client experience?
We have an app through My Prosperity Technology. It helps to give clients one view of their entire wealth and their position. It also has added features of keeping on top of cash flow and property valuations and tax help and so forth. You can put goal setting in there and other details. That we get a lot of feedback from clients on that, and technology in itself helps to feed into other pieces of technology, and I think that's where the biggest problem with our practice at the moment is probably too much technology, but we live and die by our own decisions. But ultimately, where that helps is, rather than having multiple touch points for the clients, they can look at it in one place, and the feedback is good and consistent around that piece, that they can just go to one source. It's on their phone. And this would probably surprise a lot of people, but our older clientele, which we have probably more than the average, they embrace it and they like to use it, and they find it a lot easier, because if it's set up properly, they can touch their fingerprint on the phone, and up comes all their details, and they know exactly where they're sitting at any given day or time, with live updates, including bank accounts, a whole lot. Apart from that, there's electronic fact finds and electronic risk profiles that help to reduce the time maybe in front of the planner, which helps to reduce the cost. So whilst I think the industry's seen a trend of increasing costs, we've actually been able to reduce our costs consistently over the last couple of years as our clients come on the journey with us and embrace some of that technology. So certainly we've probably cut 10 to 15 hours per year out of most clients' administration time by having the technology. So that's really helped. There's plenty of other pieces of technology in the background that we have. We'd all like to get rid of Xplan, but maybe that one, I'm sorry to people at Iris, but I think it's a pretty common point. But other than that, technology, the main pieces that really have helped us is outsourcing. So the technology that, we have paraplanners off-site. We don't, employ a paraplanner. And through Padua, they deliver our SOAs and a lot of our advice documents, and we can do an ROA in a matter of minutes across just about any platform or goal or change to their advice. So that sort of stuff has really helped to reduce time in the practice, but most importantly for clients, it's helping to reduce their costs rather than going up. Even though the compliance costs have gone up significantly and we've got to carry the cost of technology, it is an improvement. So they're probably the key elements in there that we use.
Yeah, that's really, especially having that app, and I think that's been one of the challenges in the industry, is bringing all that data together with clients with different accounts and properties and super funds and So it's great that sounds like you found a pretty good solution. I know talking to a lot of advisors there, they talk about having a solution, but there's still bits and pieces that aren't working. So my gut feel is the industry's not quite there yet. It's getting closer to having that sort of total client sort of ability to get all the data together.
Yeah, and look, it'd be remiss of me not to mention where you help us out and the other end of the advice chain as well, and that is we're seeing with younger clients, one of a better term, lower maintenance or lower fee-paying clients where they have less advice needs or lower advice needs. We're able to use Scientiam and the process that you guys have built to retain some of our lower value clients or lower maintenance clients and keep them on board, maybe at arm's length, so we don't have to charge them an arm and a leg to deliver advice that they potentially don't need. We're able to give them that advice in a very strong fashion that meets all the compliance regulations, but at a price that's a fraction of what we would otherwise have to charge. So that part of the advice delivery, we can still have our custom wholesale clients at the top end, retain those smaller value clients and give them advice, but when they need it, they can contact us. So, and then we step back into fee for the hourly sort of advice. That side of it, I think, is an area where we get a lot of feedback from other licenses of how they're struggling to see how they can retain those clients, and in some cases they're either doing it at a cost, just because from an ethical perspective they don't want to let these clients go and have them out in the wild with no one to look after them, or they've got a regulatory problem because they're charging them too much and they know it. So that side of it, I think, is a really helpful one. And again, we can keep those clients in our business, but at a fraction of the cost to them and to us as a licensee. And then the other end of the cycle, it's those lower value clients where they're just starting out, who need some advice, but again, don't need to pay $3,000 or $5,000 a year, and they can jump onto that. So that's been a big, change for us, and something that we're going to see a lot of growth, I think, through the next year or two with our business and how we see it growing.
Yeah, and it's great that you've come on board, very early into the Scientiam story, which is awesome. But I mean, great. I think advisors like you see the opportunity to help these people, and as a lot of advisors out there are still trying to work it out and go, it's too hard, it's too. But I think there is a solution, and I think long term, as advisors in the industry, I do feel that it's a bit of a responsibility that we can't just sit here and look after 50 clients. I mean, that's nice business, but being able to offer a solution to those that can't afford advice yet or don't need full advice, I think is a way forward. And you're creating a future industry that brings back a bit of, I suppose, the credibility as well. I think the industry's been bashed around a lot, so you want to look forward in 10 years and go, hey, we made a difference. We changed the language a bit.
Yes, no, I think whether it's from an incubator perspective of younger clients, children of clients who are established clients with us, or whether it's those clients who are in the twilight of their retirement and, unfortunately savings have dwindled, they've enjoyed their life, whichever aspect it is, they still need advice, but they may not need the full gambit and the 80-page SOA every year. Sometimes they just need someone to be looking after the investments in a responsible fashion. And then when, occasionally when they need some advice, whether it be Centrelink or, when it comes to aged care, there are going to be those moments, and you can then re-engage as you need, whether it's transactionally, just to address that matter, or otherwise, and get them back onto a full, full service package. But the awakening that we sort of had with that was that we don't need to let these clients go. We don't need to charge them a fortune, but we can still keep them, I say at arm's length because they're not being charged a fee. They're not being given ongoing advice directly by us, but they know that we're only a phone call away and they can re-engage at any time. And most clients, when we've positioned it with them, they've accepted it with open arms, and they're really appreciative of just the fact that we recognise that there's a value in the relationship, even though they might not sit down with us every single year or, need to have that discussion. But when they do need advice, they know that they can pick up the phone, they know exactly who they're talking to, and we can re-engage pretty easily. So I think that's the game changer in terms of hanging on to what some people would refer to as CMD clients. It's a terrible thing, but you got to look at it from a commercial standpoint at some stage, and you can't, we don't run a charity, we do run a commercial business, and this way we're meeting our obligations, and the clients are feeling that they're they're heard and they're loved, but also, we get the right advice in front of them and in a timely fashion. So it's everyone wins, I think, out of it.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I think that one of the challenges for people out there is that there's so much information and they may be a bit afraid to speak to an advisor because they're worried about cost or time. So how do we change that? Because if you just Google, investments, I mean, all sorts of rubbish comes up, and good and bad. There might be some things that are decent in there, but for someone without the knowledge or the skills to be able to decipher what's the right path, I think there still needs to be some sort of professional guidance to say, hey, you don't need a full advice, but this is a good solution in the meantime.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a lot of noise out there, and influencers, or you can't help it if you happen to go on Facebook, you can't help but get spammed by people peddling their wares. And I would argue a lot of these people have never stepped foot in a financial planning office and don't have any background. Yet we're held to a very high standard, an increasing standard, and a lot of the news or the sources that are out there definitely don't meet that standard or come close, I would suspect. But it's hard to pick, and it's hard for clients to access that in a cost-effective way. And if they're not prepared to pay for it, you do get what you pay for. But I think that it doesn't mean you need to pay an arm and a leg, and it can be done in a cost-effective way. It's just about delivering that and making it accessible. So.
Oh, that's really good. I think we've sort of covered off most of the things we're going to go through. So I really appreciate, again, your thoughts and insight. But I suppose the last question is, if there's one thing you could change in the industry, what would it be? They're
trying to reduce the amount of regulation in the regulators. I think that there almost needs to be one source. We're almost there, but we're not quite. The level of regulation, I know that's a very broad one thing, but I just think simplification of the regulation and the compliance standards can be achieved. And should be a target for the current government and future governments to make advice more accessible to more Australians, at a cost that doesn't break the bank. The compliance is the biggest burden cost-wise for a practice and a licence. If we can streamline or reduce that, then that's not just on the government. I think it's also on the providers and whether it be platforms and technology. But that compliance burden, if we can reduce that, it will open up advice to more Australians, and that's a positive thing. It's good for the economy, it's good for future Australians and all involved in the industry. But so it's a very broad one, but just reduce the compliance. That's it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, John. It's again really great to get your time and thoughts. I'm sure everyone listening to this will get some benefit out of it. I'll let you get back to your busy day of clients, and again, appreciate you spending the time on our show today.
Thanks, Nige. Appreciate it.
Speak soon.
You've been listening to The Future Financial Advisor. So if you've been enjoying the show, please make sure to share it with your network and leave a review on your favourite listening platform. Or if you've got some ideas or thoughts or would like to come on as a guest or know someone who would be a great guest, then please let me know. To learn more about Scientiam, just go to our website, scientiam.com.au, or look me up on LinkedIn. Look forward to speaking with you, and see you on the next episode.